export to the cloud. Okay, fabulous. Okay, welcome to a new installment of Exploring Consciousness. And it's so good. We have so many people on. That's absolutely fantastic. I'm very excited. So today, what we're doing is anything goes in those discussions here, as consciousness includes everything and judges nothing. We have a question today we're gonna explore, and we've got a couple of guys here, I understand, that have very good ideas on where to take this. So the question is, how is this economic virus facilitating a new wealth creation? Now, I want to kick that off with a friend of mine, Norman Jackson, who I had a virtual lunch with last week. And Norman he's financing and coaching SMEs, small, medium enterprises. And with everything that is going on at the moment, he's already been seeing a change in the requirements and in the contributions of what business is probably going to be like in the future, or certainly not being at the moment. So, and I might want to bring Norman on right away to give us a little bit of feedback on this one and tell us what his experience is. And then we'll take it from there.
Okay, thanks for the intro there, Martina. Yes, for the last 30 years, I've worked as an advisor, mentor, non-exec, chairman, corporate financier of businesses. And just reflecting on that question, I think a lot of business people I've worked with before, a lot of them have been motivated by, big cars and houses and all the rest, etc. And of course, I suppose when one goes through the phase of thinking that loads of money and houses and all the rest, etc., is going to give you happiness. Whereas certainly the years gone by, I certainly realised that it's almost the complete opposite. And I think what this economic virus is going to do is help people to come to their kind of core values of what they think about life, and it's not just materialistic. So that's my initial thoughts, Martina.
Yes. So how do you see that already happening in your business now? Lots of the SMEs are obviously struggling. So
I think looking around my friends who are in business, they realize, probably that the best things is the friends and the family are around them. And they're very lucky to be still alive in business if they can. A lot of them are going to have a lot of trouble in the next 6 months because they're going to have to take on large loans and they might not come out the other end. But I think it's this kind of the friendships and the families are so important rather than money in the bank. And I'm seeing that.
Yeah, so there's a complete redistribution of values, I suppose. That's what we're going to see through that virus facilitating all of that. Like, as you said, going away from just the money spending sort of mindset into going into more like a redistribution and abundance for all, and also using your passion to create something for the community through actually doing what you're enjoying, and not necessarily just focusing on how much money this is going to make, not the profitability of the business, rather than what is it contributing to the community. Would you say this is something that you're already seeing, or is it too early to say that?
Well, you might bring others in on this, but I know that looking at a lot of the colleagues and business people, I know that people who do contribute to the community, to charities, and it's not just throwing money at charities and saying that's what I've done with charities, actually being involved with the charity of the community. For me, they're more complete people than people just go through the business life and that's all it is to them.
So what you're saying is you have already had experience with working with people along those lines rather than, you know, well, you're working with SMEs, so that makes maybe the difference, isn't it?
No, when I meet people, I think very quickly I kind of suss out whether they are community charity type of people or where these people, you just can't trust them at all.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, admit all. Sorry, I have to admit people here. I get carried away. Okay, great. Well, let's bring Peter Forrest. You are already working along those lines, right?
Yeah, my sorry, this keeps picking up, but I'll do my best. Yeah, I mean, my background is in surveying, a surveyor and valuer. I moved into design and build construction. Couldn't find properly trained tradesmen very often because of what I found out to be a very poor education system that we've all been through, that basically trained you as a wage slave to a system that is sustained on debt. And I think we've reached this point now where that's pretty evident to everybody. And so we developed a system called TDL, hubs, which are hubs of teaching, learning and learning.
Peter, can you just repeat that? Sorry, you broke up, Peter. Could you just repeat that one?
I said TGL hubs, basically local hubs where for teacher giving and learn. So the idea is by people exchanging their knowledge, their time and their skills, they generate what now is this going on for 2K or more, a local cryptocurrency. So in effect, by people pursuing their natural talents and skills, working together in what I call birds of a feather networks, they actually generate a new banking system. So in that platform that we developed called TL Hubs, there's a marketplace where people can exchange their time, skills, goods, services for any combination of the local cryptocurrency, traditional money, alongside goods, services, time, skills, etc. In other words, one needs to be poor because everybody's got, if even no money whatsoever, they've time and skills and knowledge to exchange with local people. And that's the simplest version of it.
Peter, you're breaking up, you've been breaking up a little bit between all of that, but what I've been getting is that it's almost like you have started creating your own local currency there already. Is that?
I'm sorry if I'm picking over, I don't know what, it might be this phone, but the idea is that it's a currency, a banking system where people's choice is to be collaborative and creative generates the money, that's it. So in other words, you can have full employment because people are actually generating money by exchanging their time and skills and knowledge doing what they love doing.
And is that already is that already workable? Are you already using that, or is that something that you're thinking of, considering?
No, we built the platform, piloted it, many years in different ways, and 5 years ago, basically, I ran out of funds, and so we're seeking to really upgrade the platform and pilot it again. So I'm in discussions with different people around different ways of doing that, but I'm just describing a process where no matter what we do, in my view, in this system, if we continue with the current banking system based on cascading debt from private banking organizations, we will never solve our problems. Doesn't matter what you do. because we can only try and solve them using the same approaches that have caused the problem in the first place.
Yeah, so you're basically talking about a reset of the whole money situation, getting rid of the fiat dollar and starting to create a different sort of way of exchange.
Yeah, but our system says that we keep the existing debt-based and use the money to fund a project that creates the debt-free. So it's actually a form of money laundering for the benefit of people and planet. So you don't need all these billions and trillions of debt and derivatives and phony gambling ends for the rich. We need that money, and those people invest it in for active benefit, which real social growth, and in fact will enable people to move away from stress and control and into a life that is fun, with fun finds exploring your own creative talents.
Yeah. So I think what my contribution here, what I'm hearing from you is, you know, getting away from the debt-based money that really has to constantly outgrow itself and actually has no particular. Now, question to all of,
I can't hear thing.
sorry.
Hello? Maybe some sort of system is given staccato. Go on to some, see if that might work there.
Okay, again, you're breaking up a little bit. Sorry, I didn't really hear that. If anyone has a question or want to contribute to something, then please just, we're not that many.
I would like to speak if I can.
Sure, go for it, man.
So the problem, the position that we're in at the moment is that we have a debt-based fiat currency that is collapsing all around us. Now, you know, there are many different systems and different ways that we can build a new financial system, and it's all just hearsay at this moment. But the thing is, you know, the Fed have printed, I mean, the quantity of easing that's going on at the moment, it's just limitless. Trillions and trillions of dollars they've created recently over the past few weeks equates to the same amount of money that's created over the last 100 years of inflation. That's preposterous. And, you know, the thing is that's a crime against humanity. At any point in the last 100 years, they could have printed enough money to end poverty, you know, they're using this money to try to keep the financial system running, not to help people, not to try to curb this virus or to do anything to humanity, to save their own backs, to save their own money. It's all going in bonds and things such as this. And this is a crime against humanity. This is where we first have to put our attention. And this is where I think we'll see the first change. I think it's quite obvious that it will be a cryptocurrency that will replace the currency that we have. I know for a lot of people, the idea of a cashless society brings up ideas of more domination, more control. But it's obviously the natural evolution of the way that we're going to use currency. It has to be digital. There's no other way around it. The problem is, how do we go from the system we have now to a system that's fair for everybody without corruption? And I think this is the challenge that we face. And this is what this situation that we're in now is exposing. It's exposing all of the corruption within the financial system, the fact that it's debt-based, the fact that there is nothing backing any of this money, and that it is just debt that is being sold. And I mean, it literally is debt being sold and borrowed, debt upon debt upon debt. And this is the position that we're in. And until such a time as that we can outcreate that particular system, none of us are going to be able to have any impact at all whatsoever. It really is about educating people about what the financial system is. And I think, you know, I think we're getting close to that point now where people are starting to begin to understand exactly how much we've been duped. And then everybody's, even the governments themselves, you know, if we are to create a new system, then there has to be some way to transfer the cash and the money that we have now, the wealth we have now, into a new system. It's a big ask. It's a really big ask.
Yeah, well, it is a debt distribution at the moment, and just, you know, injecting cash injecting money to stop the bleed, basically, but there is no real stimulation into the economy. And we know that, and not everybody knows that, and I don't think this is gonna go away within the next couple of months. I think what we, you and I, and all of us, to kick off, to start off, we can actually start thinking of what else in addition can we start creating, instead of trying to get rid of that. What can we do in order to out-create it? Just like Peter said, you know, what can we do in order, and even if we're just starting to barter in the meantime, you know, the good old ways to barter, and then take it into whatever crypto, whatever you wanna call it, you know.
Well,
Exactly.
I would call it the wealth of inner self, Martina.
Exactly.
How can we tap into the wealth of the inner self?
Okay.
And
About that.
And lockdown is an ideal time, whether we like it or not, to look at that and to look at the inner self, to look at, as you were saying, what our passions are, what can we do, how can we be creative. I think you touched on it there, you know, can you barter with people for stuff, can you swap, can you give and receive? I mean, it's all things that, you know, the ancient ones, our ancestors, were doing. But that's a whole system that's been taken away from us or overwritten with the false fiat currency system. And there's so many things, and I see it around me, people doing it now. You know, we've got a local WhatsApp group, you know, I've got eggs, has anybody got bread? People, so many people, you all must have seen this, people growing their own veg. I've never grown my own veg. I'm doing it now, and when I have a surplus, I shall look at giving it, selling it, swapping. And I like that idea. I like going back to the natural way of living. I think so many people long to go back to the natural way of living, but it is such a big jump from the system we have now to do that. And I don't know much about economics. I know how to work from my heart. And I think that there's great potentials for change in the way we do things now, different platforms. This lockdown must be surely a catalyst for change, a springboard to get, you know, some great ideas to things shifted, because we know the old ways have shown that they don't work. And I think we all have unique gifts that we can bring to the world. And it is a time of self-searching. It's certainly a time of self-education. And what can we offer? I mean, I'm going to personally, I've not thought of doing this before, but offering an online shamanic course, because I'm very big into, as you know, shamanry and living the natural way. And it's something I'd very much like to do. And if anyone's interested, and, you know, they'll find me. I put stuff out there, and that's how I'm going to launch myself. One, you know, to help people, but also to earn some money. And I think so many people will turn to the online businesses. And there also so many people are having to work from home. Maybe they're going to ask the question, why do they get in that traffic queue at 8:30 or earlier in the morning? Why are they getting up with the alarm that's interrupting their natural rhythm and their natural dream time? Why are they doing that? Because the system says you have to. So where's the self-sovereignty in that if you're being dictated to by a system? And it's got everybody working 9 to 5, so you get on a crowded tube. I mean, it's a ridiculous system, but people tend not to question it. And I think the lockdown, as I say, is an ideal time for people to cultivate the space and see what can come up for their inner self, their inner wealth, what they can offer. And even mums at home with children saying, well, I haven't got time to do what I want to do. I haven't got time to be creative. Involve the children. I know Matty does with his girls, don't you? I mean, it's involve them, do something, grow veg together, anything, you know, make stuff, make dream catchers and sell dream catchers. I mean, there's just so many things we can do and make use of this time and contribute to what we would call a new earth.
Yeah, thank you, Laura, for mentioning that. And, you know, that leads us back to the question, you know, how is this economic virus facilitating a new wealth creation, you know, and before we even think of what type of money, what type of bills, what type of currency we're using to exchange our contributions, the question really might be, what does wealth actually mean to us, you know? And you've just given a really nice sort of, you know, picture of what it can mean to people. And then, of course, you know, that's where it all starts. And then we can take it further. So what else is out there that we can contribute and take on to a bigger level, you know, national, international level? Yeah.
Can I interject?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. But you see, the thing is, what happens when our money is worthless, you know? And this is something that we have to contemplate because you know, there are a myriad of different ways for us to create wealth, but what if that wealth is worthless? You know, what happens is when the more money that's printed, the more quantitative easing that's done, the less the value of the money, the less you get for your dollar, for your pound, for your euro, whatever it is that you use. You know, and I see this process. I see this process. You see, they can't allow us all to starve, because if we begin to starve, we will revolt. And they know this, you know, and this is the point where we're at. So you know, it's an interesting time that we're at, because the virus hasn't just exposed, it's exposed everything, hasn't it? It's exposed everything. It's given us. I mean, me for one, I know that our family has been much better for this process. It's actually brought us much closer together. Not that we were distant in the first place, but we've come together in ways we couldn't even imagine that we could. It's been a beautiful blessing in a way. And I've actually caught the virus. You know, it's been beautiful. But then, you know, but if I went to the shop one day and it cost me £100 to buy a loaf of bread, or there were no loaf of bread, not that I eat bread anyway, but you know, it's just a metaphor. Then things are different, aren't they? You know, yeah. This is when things change.
Yeah.
And this is what we're at. We're at the precipice of those kind of decisions. What do the governments do? It will be obvious at some point to everybody, and people will make videos to show exactly how we've been duped by the previous financial system.
Yeah.
And people are going to want to create a new financial system. And I mean, I myself have lived from barter and trade for nearly 15 years. And done very, very well out of it. I've earned more money than I ever could have done in a job, that's for sure. But it's not for everybody.
Matthew,
but it comes down to that you know, how much is your pound worth? And if your pound is worthless, well, what are you going to do?
Yeah. You know, you mentioned it earlier on. I mean, this is what this virus is facilitating. It's facilitating us to look at the system, to look at the reality we have bought into, to look at the government, if you wish, and actually lose faith, lose trust, if for the ones who haven't yet, and actually really start taking responsibility for their own actions and say, okay, so the government is obviously not, you know, contributing the way we need them to. So what if we can just out-create that too, you know? And obviously it's going to take, you know, small steps to kick it off, and more people getting together. You're absolutely right.
They are afraid. They are afraid. And that works in our favor. You see, that's why they can't allow us to starve. So they're trying to, you know, the more they try to prop up the financial systems. I mean, it's bonds at the moment. That's what they're trying to prop up bonds. And
as we said, it's a debt.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
That's all.
And it just takes one small fire to light a bloody bushfire that all of us will be out on the streets, whether it's metaphorically or physically, you know, because the virus, we can't exactly go out en masse. But there are ways that we can crash the system. And if enough people know, just like Bill Gates has been dropped, you know, the things that are going on at the moment with Bill Gates and that, when enough people become aware of a situation, they have to respond to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're at.
Can I ask you a question, Matthew? You mentioned, I think the last 15 years that you haven't been had to use the kind of financial system.
Yes.
How is that manifested practically? How have you managed to kind of live without being involved with the?
Do you know, if you'd have asked me last week, I'd have discussed it openly. But my team have been telling me not to not to be so open with information. But put it this way, let's just say I've been trading on the free market. So not trading as in like financial trading, but as in like I've been accumulating physical assets that I then sell for more than the value I pay for them.
Right. So it's trading. It's bartering. Hmm?
Barter and trade via cash.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Okay.
I've earned nearly £500,000 in the last 10 years.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Hmm?
I have none of that now. Yeah.
It's all leaving us. But let's not go on the currency, on the money itself. Let's bring it back to the wealth, and let's bring it back to the wealth that we can create, and what's it going to look like, and also from an individual perspective. How can we actually trust in ourselves? I know we can't trust in the government or what's going on, the fake media and all of that, but how can we trust in ourselves that whatever does happen, we will bounce back from that? We will be able to create, food and find food, and you got 4 kids, don't you, Matty? So, and
I do.
Yeah, and that's really something I'd like to focus on. So what else is out there, and how can we redefine wealth to start off with, not to get hung up on the money itself so much? We can make another Zoom maybe where we just talk about currencies and stuff like that.
We can. It's an interesting one, and I myself have ended up with I had a plan to move home basically, and I wanted to move home this summer, and we rent, and so it's becoming that the place that we're in is becoming, the landlord is just not interested in maintaining the property at all. So we had a off you go. So we had a plan to move home, and that culminated in me acquiring physical assets. And all of a sudden this has happened, and now my physical assets that I wanted to sell for cash now are more valuable to me than cash was. But the thing is, and the truth is, that I can't see past those assets. I have absolutely no long-term plans, what I did before. And that's the position I'm in personally.
Yeah.
I don't own my own home. I absolutely have no idea. But I have faith, and I have faith, and the whole way through, the last 10 years, all that's been on my mind is, when is something going to happen? When is something going to happen? And look at it. We're sharing a worldwide event here that we're all in together. I mean, if that isn't something happening, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
But we have no predictive model. How can we know?
There's a lot happening, and that's exactly it. That trust, that faith that you're mentioning is, you have to have trust and faith in yourself now because of the unpredictability, because there's nothing we can plan, and I think we're pretty much, all of us, we're sitting here, and some of us living of our savings. Certainly I do. I'm not having any income at the moment, and I can look, I had a friend of mine, she was telling me back in the oil industry, she had 2 people already committing suicide, but that's an interesting choice too. So there's so many different ways of reacting to this, and I think the big invitation here is, like Laura said, is to really go back into acknowledging, what do you know about yourself, and what if you just know that you will overcome that, and what is the new abundance, instead of just talking about profitability, and how can we then redistribute that abundance, which is obviously available anyhow, to everyone else. So there's a lot of opportunity for all of us to jump into that, and actually start having a couple of ideas going, and use your imagination, use your inner genius to look at that. So what ideas? Who else wants to say something?
I'll jump in here.
Please.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Dave.
Hey, yeah, with what you're saying, the virus exposing all, Laura getting back to nature, cash is worthless. What is wealth? What is it? Did you realize shelter, food, water? That's what everyone needs right now. If you have that, you're a wealthy person. the way that, you know, the money system has, you know, valued stuff. You know, they had more value in derivatives than in total assets, like 3 times as much. You know, what is that? That, you know, $2 quadrillion worth of derivatives, where does that value come from? And then we have the money.
How many zeros?
How you value the people. And I think you have like an average worldly wage, you know, everyone you know, that's probably what, you know, the insurance and the banking and all, you know, the chattel they talk about, they have systems, equations, and that values each human life, and then they trade on their own internal knowledge. You know, we got to have equal knowledge here, not just if you have secret knowledge of how this system works, you know, you make wealth. You know, there's enough for all.
Yeah, I think equal knowledge is going to be a difficult one. Equal knowledge, but I think this is the time. Maybe I got that in the wrong context now. But I think this is the time where individual leaders are actually required to step into the leadership. Every single one of us, you know, and look at that, because not everyone is going to be a leader. Not everyone is going to be able to look at it and say, okay, this is what we've got now. What can we do with it? Not everyone is solution oriented. So, and now the question is, what is our contribution to make it work, to bring other people into a community where we can start inspire them, if you wish, to have their own knowingness and to think along those lines.
I think that's what, you know, get the name was talking about, exposing Bill Gates and the other stuff, you know, the global narrative. How, you know, the global narrative is going to break down when you know, like if, you know, we had what, 30% defaults on mortgages in March, you know, and
in America,
jobs aren't coming back. Yeah.
You got the highest
coming back. The virus.
You got a very high, what do you call it? That rate when nobody's working. Sorry, job loss.
Unemployment.
Unemployment. Thank you.
Unemployment.
Yes.
The dole. What is it? The UB40.
Yes.
If you remember.
I don't know what it is here in England, but you know we're not even halfway there. We're still in ignorance, thinking everything is going to be cool, right?
Yeah. But, you know, it's redefining what each life is worth. You know, each human, you know, you come here, say from a conscious aspect, you come here, you're birthed into this system. What is it that we're all trying to bring together? You know, and say at a DNA technology level. What are your thoughts on that, Martina?
Yeah.
Communication,
yeah. I mean, I know. Yeah. But do we all know what we're here for? I mean, that's the initial exploration, isn't it? I don't want to call it purpose, because we all know we're here to, you know, call forth our multidimensional aspects and come into this life in our totality. But what exactly is the unique contribution of that for each one of us?
Right, and the you know, from a, you know, astrological, energetic, electromagnetic spectrum, you know, what we're experiencing now is similar to back in the 1760s, 1770s with Pluto in Capricorn, and how it started, you know, a few years back, and will continue, I think, till 2027. And it's where structures change, you know, as the British Empire expanded, you know, its control over the world trade, and that through militarism and, you know, writing the narrative.
Yeah.
You know, after, you know, what went on in India and China, You know, if we had today a drug dealer that said, hey, I'm selling drugs to your people, don't try and stop me. You sunk my ship. All right, I'm moving in and I'm taking over. You know, what would you think of a country that did that today with something like, you know, no, we're there, we're supporting in this. And, you know, there was a genocide in India too, you know, as the British Empire, well, and right across the water there in Ireland with the potato famine caused by landlords who didn't live there, taking all the wealth of the land from the people that lived there. You know,
We learned from
that's
that,
where,
Dave.
you know,
What have we learned from that? Other than we will overcome? How are we going to make it different this time?
Are we going to outcreate?
How are we going to outcreate it? We're going to do it differently this time. This is the opportunity for all of us to stand up and say no more of that old bullshit. We're going to do it differently, but we need to have an idea.
No more corruption.
Well, that's the thing. It's the corruption, right?
and the
And
kleptocracy,
humanity.
you know, what they define as capitalism is really, you know, welfare for the rich. You know, they take all these tax dollars. Our military is spending is more than what, the next 15 countries? They're taking our money, our tax money, and doing that, and then they lose trillions as well. You know, how come that's not explored by the media? You know, Rumsfeld came out right before 9/11 on 9/10 and said, you know, there's 2 trillion missing from the Pentagon budget. Next day, boom, you know, a plane comes right into the office that was doing the review of where that lost money was.
And what if, Dave, the time was not right? The time was not ready then, and now it is.
Well, it is now because we've got lockdown.
Yeah, and how is this virus facilitating the new creation of abundance for all, if you wish?
I'll jump in, Martina.
Go for it.
So I think what's different now, my name's Matt, by the way. I work with Peter. I think he's lost his connection, but Peter.
I've turned the video off.
Oh, sound. Hi, mate. All right, yeah. So my work with Peter is around creating a new narrative, really. Now, I think why this is the opportunity that, in a way, that's unfolding in a way it never has before, is that there's people have time to join dots together. I've always seen, not me, just consciousness unfolding through me, but I've always been, the dots have joined together for me, I guess, in a nice way. And that's been, as Peter, I'm sure, would say as well, that's been frustrating when other people can't see the same picture. But now more and more people are joining the dots together. And if you look at some of the documentaries that are being released on YouTube, the Out the Shadows one, which came out the other day, 10 million people have watched that in 3 days on different platforms, and it will grow exponentially. So
Wow.
all of a sudden now, you've got 10 million people who are aware that the story they've been presented with up to now has been a complete lie, in terms of the financial system, in terms of in terms of everything comes through the media. So that the filter that everything has been presented through has been a lie. So all of a sudden you've got people, I'm not saying everyone, but I should think a high percentage of them people would like to take a stake in creating a new story, in creating a new financial system. To refer back to something Matthew talked about before, I know from the position of where we are now, it seems like a big jump to a new economic system. Peter's the expert on this. I'm only going to touch on it. I'm not going to go deep into it, but the local cryptocurrency doesn't need to be the same in each place. The rationale needs to be the same, obviously, but you know, you can swap the Liverpool cryptocurrency for the Cape Town cryptocurrency. It's worth the same. It's called different names. It's got, maybe it's evolved differently, but it's the same. It's worth the same. Do you know what I mean? So we can keep our identity through the cryptocurrency. It doesn't have to be, do you know what I mean? So I feel very, very in a roundabout way, I feel very, very optimistic that all of a sudden there's there's millions of people, more millions every day who want to create a new story. People, the gateway point to that is recognizing that everything we've been presented with is a lie. Once people recognize that, and they recognize that the banking system is a complete shambles, then we can create. It takes for me, it's about critical mass. It takes a certain amount of people to join enough dots together to then go, do you know what? This is affecting me and my family, my nearest and dearest, and I've had enough. I want to do something. The system, Peter unfortunately broke up a bit before, but the systems Peter's describing, the beauty of it is, it's just celebrating what people are doing anyway, celebrating all the great stuff that's going on anyway. It's not about, I know we're at the moment, it feels, you know, we all recognize the need for action. But I would just say, stay steady, keep doing what you're doing, and just it will unfold in ways. It's already unfolding for me in ways I could never have imagined, in a wonderful way. So stay steady.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Could I ask something?
Of course.
Could I just, Matt, could I ask you the name of the video that got the 3 million hits?
It's called Out the Shadows.
Thank you.
Hey, Matt, I'd like, do you know, what you're saying there, Matt, is so true, because, you know, there are 3 billion people on lockdown. 3 billion people on lockdown. What are they doing? They're not earning money. They're sitting on their asses at home, and they want answers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's phenomenal. 3 billion people, what that does. I mean, you know what it does to those of us that have managed to achieve the level of consciousness that we have, to awaken as we have, the effect that we have with the collective consciousness. 3 billion people at home looking for answers. It's phenomenal. It's a time of great change. And the truth is that, you know, the sky is the limit, man. We can create whatever the fuck we please. It's beautiful. It's a great time to be alive.
Agreed.
And talk about captive audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and that program that Matt was talking about is it's a Christian made film, but that's the beauty of this. We're all coming to the same truths because we're all under the same iron hand of unforgiveness. And that's the matter of fact.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So rest, reset, pause, do the inner work, well, use your imagination and just let everything unfold. I think unfolding is such a good word at the moment. You know, and I agree too. There is no having to do anything at this stage, other than probably just working with your imagination and really thinking deeply, what is it that makes me happy to contribute? What am I passionate about?
I think the out creating is a very important word for this time as well, so that we don't slip back into the old ways that didn't work.
Yes.
I think there's a city in India, Auroraville, that has been cashless for like a decade or more, or many, many years, and they all just have skills and they contribute. And, you know, it's a cohesive society. And, you know, that's what we need to look at. You know, we have a lot of problems in the cities that were a result of industrialization. You know, you move people, stacked them on top of one another. You know, then you took the industry away that, you know, at least provided the cash that provided the exchange for goods. And now there, you know, you have problems in the cities, and maybe like Laura said, you know, get people back to more natural. And to do that, you know, as shamans, you know, we become the mediums between the seen and the unseen. So how do we take our knowledge that we have here and build that in consciousness as a seed thought that now grows?
Yeah, and talking about going back to the natural way, we also need to consider one thing, which is becoming blatantly obvious now, is that we will continue working in a virtual world. Okay, so there will be a lot of, you know, interconnectivity through the virtual, you know, ways, so working through computers, working through means of, you know, communication. So I think that will be, for me, I'm seeing a huge influence on that.
And, you know, how does consciousness relate to that infrastructure? You know, as
well, depends where we go with the raising of the consciousness, because maybe we can, you know, skip the computer age and just...
Exactly. It's a precursor to a telepathic society. It's a precursor to a telepathic society. But, you know, absolutely. If you want to become a telepathic society that are able to exist in the dream world, co-creating in that outside of time, the internet was the perfect go-to for that process. And then that's what we're, you know, that's what we're in now.
To wean us off, you know, and
absolutely
get us into that direction. Yeah, let's not jump the gun though on this one.
Oh, non-linearity.
to do a
How
little
about
bit more on this one.
It's already happened, and we just have to recognize it and bring it to us.
Yeah.
And that's true too, but that's also when I mean imagination, I mean, you know, using your inner knowingness. We call it imagination, but is it really just that, or is it an inner knowingness? What else is actually possible here? Yeah, and then how do you market yourself telepathically? You know, how are we going to do that? I mean, that would be an interesting exploration.
Advertisements in the dream world.
You know, or if we go to holograms, we don't even need to bloody plant any seeds anymore. Just apple.
Make a million of yourselves, millions of yourselves, and go and walk on every street and advertise your product.
Yeah, so you know, I mean, that's probably a bit of a jump, but I think that virtual way of working is something, you know, that needs to be considered.
Oh, absolutely, because you're going to be modern practitioners in a modern world, and you've got to use what is the right platforms that are there. And that doesn't stop you working in the natural way, just because you use modern technology.
And a natural way, we could also call it the localized. So going away from the globalization, from the globalization into deglobalization, and starting to do everything more locally. You know, creating different bubbles of reality, creating different communities, and every community, every bubble of reality has their own cryptocurrency.
That's it.
Like Peter and Matt were saying, you know, and everyone is independent, not co anymore. That independence, that does not mean that we can't contribute to different bubbles, to different communities.
That's it. That's it. Because if we want to outcreate the current system, is that we don't use petrodollar. We don't use one system to create our currency. Anybody can get together and create their own currency. You can be a collective of 1, 2, 1 million, 1,000, whatever, and we can intercreate, co-create together. You know, that's it. It's the idea of the pod communities, isn't it? Of one pod that has one theme, one pod that has another. Exactly. And it's so different to the system that we have now. It's just, you know, being able to see outside of this system and to see that we don't have to have one system that fits everybody. We can do whatever we please, and we can co-create as we see fit.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And that idea requires individual, emotionally mastered, sovereign beings, because that's where it starts. You know, the emphasis is on humanity now. How is the human, you know, developing within all of that, in isolation, if you wish? You know, how are we going to use that opportunity now to actually become those sovereign beings who can create like that without being codependent? And what I'm seeing, you know, government give me that, government do this for me, government, why is the government doing this? Why they can't think for themselves? So, you know, and this is what we need to look at, not judging other people, but really, you know, getting back to ourselves when we go there and say, okay, so, you know, take yourself back. What is it that we can do in order to outcreate all of that?
Making the current system irrelevant to our process of evolution.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Got to change sitting up here. Good. Whoever hasn't said anything, do you want to say something? I'm having issues with the sun. Can you believe this?
Oh, you look magnificent in it.
Oh, thank you very much.
Can I just say something?
Please.
It's Peter here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh yeah, because I can't put my thing on my. If I put my video on, it goes crackly.
Yeah, you're much better like this.
All I was going to say was that, in my view, it's about unity and diversity. So, if on a spiritual context, if we realize that there's only one self, there's one consciousness, and it's expressing itself in infinite ways through all of us and all of the life forms, not just on this planet, throughout the galaxy, then what's actually happening is whatever we want to call God, it's just having an exploration of what it is. And so we can easily work to develop our own levels of awareness while benefiting the whole. And I think that is really the pure expression of love, is an unconditional self-service, in a way, serving each other and serving the self at the same time.
Well said.
And
yes. And?
okay.
No, sorry, I cut you there. It's well said. Yes.
Yeah, thanks. No, I finished. That's all I meant when I said end.
Yeah. And in order to come back, I just wanted my end would be, in order to come back and understand that concept of oneness, we need to go down the road of empowerment and unique diversification, because that's the bridge. There needs to be a bridge between codependency and unity. And that bridge for me has always been self-empowerment, understanding, acknowledging my unique contribution of who I am. Then you can get out of judgment. You can get out of judgment of the self, judgment of others, which then leads you back into community. And that's a bit of a stretch. And that's the work we need to focus on.
You don't have to ask permission from anybody.
No, you need to give
it's about respect.
permission.
Exactly.
Give yourself permission. And the problem is with giving ourselves permission is often that we used to have a lot of distraction, a lot of outside validation. And then again, how is this virus facilitating the new wealth creation? Well, exactly that, because the outside distraction is falling away. There's no bloody sports at the moment, you know, nobody can watch sports. There's lots of other things that are disappearing. So you're being almost forced into your little container here and into your house and say, okay, so what is that now? And then it comes down to choice. What are you choosing? Some people are choosing to get out. Some people are choosing to create something different.
If you think about it, as you can now probably hear without breaking up, if all of our choices that were creative and collaborative generated new debt-free money, then everybody would contribute to a beautiful life, because that's the only way they could earn anything. And that's a very simplistic overview, but in principle, that would mean that the human race would be paying themselves to have fun. And that's really what we're about.
Exactly.
Can I play devil's advocate here? Is it okay if I just jump in with a curveball?
You always anyway, Matt.
Because I have this musings that you know, let's say that we got like Bitcoin, which is a finite currency. There will only ever be so many Bitcoin. Now, if we put a currency like that on this planet, and everybody was given an equal amount, within 10 years, you'd have rich and poor people. You know, that's a fact, isn't it? You know, some people would just do better and others would just not, you know? And it's how we can facilitate a system that doesn't allow that, you know? That doesn't allow that. It's a pickle for sure. It really is a pickle.
Yes, and...
Can I say something on that?
Yeah, go for
Please
it.
do.
The answer is, I think that we're stuck in a system that has created our way of thinking, and that way of thinking can never solve the problem. So we need to do something so that the young people today can see things differently, and then they won't think like us, and the problem won't exist. So
That's
in
a
other words,
beautiful answer.
we need to be working for the future. We need to be working for the children, and we need to not. We need to get them out of the education system that teaches them only enough to survive as a wage slave to a corrupt system. And that should be our focus, is not on ourselves, but on the future of our children and the potential of humanity that can appear through them. So in other words, we need to teach
We
them.
ensure that poverty never exists again.
Well, poverty is really
We ensure that poverty never exists again, but by our co-creation with each other. Exactly. That's beautifully said.
Yeah, it's a lack of understanding of what spiritual connectivity is, because we've been taught by men in black frocks that God is outside of us. So I think we need to change the whole basis of what religion is into what Matt and I call self-service, and that is service to the one consciousness that is in all life.
So I'm a big fan of getting rid of religions. That will sort that out.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I want to say something to the children. Do you know what? Again, like Matt was saying, everything is already happening. I think those kids that are coming in now, they will teach us, and all we need to do is actually listen. Because, I mean, my daughter is 21, so she's already on a different level of awareness. Still, of course, very influenced by this reality. But I'm even talking about the next generation. And they're coming in with a completely different sort of consciousness. And all we really need to do is listen to them, because they will teach us. So there won't be a need for us to, the entire education system will change purely because they will not allow themselves to be incarcerated and like we did.
Well, as long as we don't let
it
them.
Will start changing now with the lockdown. You know, there are people who probably think their children are better off at home than in the school system. We might see some change from when things start to not get back to normal, because we don't want that. But when things shift again, maybe there'll be some children who actually, one, don't want to go back, but whose parents don't want them to go back into that system.
Yeah. Well, I'm just glad my daughter's 21, because homeschooling would not be for me, to be honest. So not my thing, but I'm out of it.
We've homeschooled all of our daughters. My eldest is 20. My youngest is 5. And I have to say that I've seen progressively, from the eldest to the youngest, they've become more wild as they've gone along. And my youngest is like an ascended master in a blonde-haired, blue-eyed body that acts like a crazy monkey. It's bizarre, honestly. She comes out, she has her own reality rules, and she will not subscribe to mine. Hers are hers. She even refers to things like, she says, when I was in mummy's tummy, she clearly remembers the fetus in the womb process.
Fantastic.
And this is, this is our legacy, isn't it? It's already in flow. It is already in flow. We can pontificate, and I enjoy to do so, but as you can clearly see, but it's already in flow. These children are amazing. They're amazing. And then when you take them out of that control system, they flourish.
Yeah. Yeah.
And can I just say that, on that point that, agreed about the young children coming through, agreed about the level of consciousness intact and not damaged and distorted in the way that perhaps we have been. And we are here, and we are the elders, and we have a life, if not lifetimes, of wisdom and experience to impact and make change, haven't we now? So I think my only thing, when people go, the children are going to sort it out, I just go, yes. And as elders, what can we still step into in our own service to breaking that personal, breaking those paradigms and making it a safer environment for those kids, because we know many of us have witnessed sensitive kids, and we also know that the education, the family, the health system and the care systems that they're born into can also greatly impact how they get to shine or not. So
Yeah.
don't want to be on a downer on it, but you know, we're talking about building a system, and I do get, yes, why wouldn't birds of a feather or like-minded beings or awakened consciousness or, you know, beautiful networks of people, why wouldn't we come together and get strength and courage and encouragement from each other? So thank you, Martina, for hosting this today, and hello everyone. Hello all those American shamans
Thanks for
out
coming
there.
on.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, Susan. Good
on,
to meet
yeah.
you too.
So
Can I just,
yeah, you know,
sorry,
I
Susan.
just on that mantle of responsibility, really, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, yes, and the way I see it is clearing our crap, getting away from the codependency from the system, acknowledging the craziness of this reality and holding space. That's one of the things that I am contributing, doing my work. And if anybody wants to hear it, you know, anybody wants any help with it, then that's what I do. I'm here to help.
So, you know, Martina, what Laura said as well is right, because I think we've got families at home now that have to listen to each other talk. You know, there's no excuses, because even when you're at home together and people have the day-to-day routine, the 9 to 5, you know, you haven't got time to, because the mum's got this to do, that to do, that to do, this routine, blah 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 blah. There's still routines that have to fit in and facilitate the work routine, but now there's none of that. So I think people have got to actually sit down and listen to their children and listen to the wisdom that these tiddlers have to say. It's remarkable.
Yeah, yeah. And let's not forget the possibility in all of this that the systems that are there can change from within. So we're going from like polarized, you know, school or homeschooling, but there is the possibility that some schools will change with their leadership, and therefore what they start to teach people, what they start to teach our children. Yeah, I mean, we already know in some schools they do meditation and yoga as an example. So maybe maybe it's a bit slow for most of us, the way the change is coming, but maybe there are changes already happening from more conscious people being in the system, or people in the system becoming more conscious and more aware.
It's true. And
So
do you know, Laura? Sorry, do you know, Laura, a friend of mine, when this began to take hold, I mean, obviously my children are homeschooled, so we went on lockdown in mid-February. As soon as I saw this come in, and as soon as, you know, our friend AB said what he said about this, then, you know, I went straight into lockdown. And I had a friend, and he was telling me, you know, he can't just leave his job or take his children out of school until such and such and such. They actually took the children away to Italy in the middle of the outbreak to a school trip, right? And he took his children out of school immediately. Do you know, they said to him, "Who do you think you are?" That was their response to him. "Who do you think you are?" And that spoke to me so deeply. I said, you know, well, I'm a sovereign being who's owning, you know, and this is it, isn't it? You know, I think the people within the system, they're brainwashed, but they're also aggressive. You know, some of these teachers and that, you know, they're very, very aggressive in the way that they just expect that everybody should do what they say. And I think people after this experience are going to have more sovereignty, more ability to say, no, whatever you say is not what I agree with. And you know, and my opinion counts, you know, and I think this is another level of sovereignty that we're going to see from this. You know, just because you're a teacher doesn't mean you have the right answer. And as a matter of fact, quite often than not, it means you have the wrong answer.
Well, yes, but there's nothing to say that teachers themselves can't become more conscious or gain their sovereignty.
Let's hope so.
And
Let's hope so.
Then maybe you're sending your children to a school of consciousness.
Wouldn't that be lovely? I think you'd make a great teacher, Laura. I'd send my kids to your school, that's for sure.
Thank you. But there's all sorts of potentials that this is throwing up. And I'm saying it's not just that all that, there's also a middle road.
Yeah.
You know, maybe banking will still be there, but a fairer system. Schooling will still be there, but in a much more sovereign way.
Or if you choose, if one person chooses they like the old system, well, there you go, you have the old system, but we choose this system over here. Maybe we can have an a la carte system where everybody is catered for. You know?
Well, what I'm saying is the old system itself has the possibility to change because
Absolutely.
it's made up of people, for example, the teachers in the schooling system, who themselves can become more conscious.
Yes, yes. Less dependent upon the rules that they're given.
What we're looking at is the hierarchical order and structure is falling apart.
Yeah,
and we're going into that. Going back to the teacher saying, you know, who do you think you are? Sovereignty goes much further anyway, isn't it? As soon as you're born, you can't have a baby at home anymore and not get a birth certificate, right? They force you to come to hospital. They force you to have a birth certificate. That's where we can look into that when you look into energy harvesting, where they start harvesting our energy. It's not just...
We did it. We actually managed to do it. And I think that's why this one's so crazy.
Well, and you don't have a birth certificate? You didn't have to go to...
No. I delivered her in a living room floor. Yeah.
You have to go and get her checked in hospital?
Nope.
No birth certificate? No, nothing? Nope. You have no birth certificate for your children?
Oh, no, she does have a birth certificate now. But the reason was because, to cut a long story short, I went to prison and my wife had to get government assistance, and they wouldn't allow her to get government assistance unless all the children were registered. But we actually got away with it for a couple of years, yeah.
I think on that point, if I can just come in there, I think on that point, in essence, we need to look at the pernicious effect of admiralty law. Admiralty law is used virtually right across the planet to turn us into assets, effectively, of a corporate structure that relies on us never declaring ourselves as sovereign human beings, but being classified as persons in ownership to the corporation of whatever country that we're in. And that's got to change, because the law is at the moment keeping us trapped as slaves.
Exactly. So that's a whole different conversation we're going to have at some stage, but you're absolutely right, Peter. So this is the roots going really, really deep. We're just playing on the surface now with the seedlings and, you know, with a couple of broken trees here, but the roots are going really, really deep. So yeah, but let's go back to the initial question and see if there's anything, if I can get one sentence from each of you. How is this economic virus facilitating a new wealth creation? What did you, on a summary basis here, get out of this or want to add that we haven't discussed yet?
Well, first of all, can I congratulate Dave as an American with that wonderful golf cap on his head, because that is a British golf cap, Dave. And I hope with all this economic crisis that whatever level of golf you play, that we can go out there and enjoy the game. And thank you for wearing that open golf hat.
You must play Norman with him.
Absolutely.
Dave, did you get that hat at an open golf site? Did you come over to the UK and watch us over here?
No, I had a friend that I work with, a vendor who lives in what is it now? Up there where they hosted it in Ireland.
Right. Okay.
But I've played St. Andrews, Carnoustie, Royal Lytham, and Turnberry.
Wonderful.
On a previous trip. Not very well, but I did play.
Yeah. Good. Well, one day we'll have a game when you're over.
Sounds great.
Ready, friends, community. Thanks, Norman. What else we got? Anyone else wants to share something before we finish off?
Sure, I will. I will. So what we're seeing from this, for me, to use a metaphor from AB himself, we're seeing the skirt fly up and we can see the panties, and I think that's exactly what's going on right now. And that goes for, you know, it's just amazing. It's incredible. It's just incredible. You know, just amazing.
So let's hope everyone's wearing some. Otherwise, it's going to get atrociously difficult to watch.
If I can say just
a little too vulgar.
It's Peter. If I can say something just quickly,
Yeah.
I think we should be aware that that if we look at the current system as problematic, then in my view, we're not going to be able to solve those problems by using the same approach that created those problems.
That's
So in other words, it's a bit like we had a sort of phrase, we've got to flip the system. So we need to flip our thinking. We need to think totally out of the box, because we will never solve the problems of this planet by relying on those same hierarchies, so-called experts in all sorts of silos themselves, from academia to health, so-called, and military, etc., banking. We're never going to be, if we rely on them to come up with the solutions, we will never solve the problems, because they can only think in silos.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're not fighting the virus. We are actually quite excited for it to facilitate the new era of economy, light, whatever you want to call it, living, communal living, creating, out-creating, co-creating, that type of
Yeah.
Can I just come in there with some final words? For me, I would ask people to use this time, as I said, to look at the wealth of the inner self. And it's always the self-work, the self-love, the self-nurture, and the self-education of what is going on. That really, you know, when you start to develop yourself and take yourself forward, that can make the great changes that we need.
Aho.
Yeah.
I'll just add one little thing.
Yes.
I think for all of us here, we're all excited as we step into the maybe more of the human family, as opposed to the, you know, just our family. I guess what I've been experiencing is, you know, having open conversations with some people I never expected to. Other people really detaching from me. Maybe other people have had similar experiences. But I guess my final word would be compassion. Really, everyone. It's the personal part of personal sovereignty. From where I see it, is that it's everyone's choice to wake up if they choose to, or to wake up at their own speed, or in stages, or not at all. And there's no judgment on any of that. Some people will choose, you know, change. I know many people who resist change, even if it's positive change, just because their life has been so, you know, their life experience in this lifetime has been so painful. So any change is viewed as painful. This is obviously a big shock. Do you know what I mean? Particularly for people who don't cope well with change. So I think that compassion will serve us all, for ourselves. You know, it's none of our responsibilities. So you know, I feel I'm very open with people. I spread the word. I help people to join the dots as I feel fit to. But I also am breaking them patterns of codependency where it's not my responsibility. Everyone's on their own journey. Do you know what I mean? So compassion for ourselves in what we can do, compassion for others in how, if, when they wake up, and let's enjoy the ride.
Well said, brother.
Thanks, Matt.
Here.
Aho.
Anyone else? Good. Well, then I'm going to finish it off, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're exploring consciousness, and consciousness includes every experience, every choice, and it does not judge any of them, just like what Matt so beautifully said. what we're doing here. We're just playing with different points of views, throwing up a couple of inspirations, ideas. You can choose them, you can leave them, you can do whatever you want. You can come back up on a Wednesday at 5 GMT time and join us to play or not. It's entirely up to you. But I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing your perspectives. And I feel great having you had on it, and I certainly get from it. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Martina. Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Martina.
Thank you,
everybody.
Nice to meet you all, huh? Take
Bye
care.
bye, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.
See you later, guys.
All the best.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.